Jack Smith, where could he possibly be hiding? What is this man doing to avoid coming before the American people under oath? Let me tell you, there's a different story that is the reality. October 30th of last year, I sent a letter to Chairman Grassley on this committee and said, let's bring Jack Smith before us under oath in public to answer these questions. He was ready. He'd volunteered to do it, but the chairman didn't take advantage of it. So the question that's been raised by Senator Blackburn is whether what we need to do to bring Jack Smith before us under oath. What you need to do is to push the open door. He's already testified before the House committee. First, they put him in private, and then he brought it out in public under oath. Under penalty of perjury, he answered the questions, the same ones you're going to be posed with today. So he's not hiding. He's not avoiding this. He's ready to come and testify under oath. We've sent another letter to Chairman Grassley saying, bring him in. Let's ask him directly the answers to these questions. For reasons that aren't clear to me at all, we're here today to discuss Jack Smith's role in a legal procedure, a procedure created by Congress and regularly deployed by federal prosecutors to collect the toll records of people President Trump contacted in his efforts to overturn the election of 2020. As a reminder, in 2020, President Trump spent months spreading the big lie that the election was stolen. Never any proof whatsoever of that fact. He pressured state election officials and members of Congress to help overturn the results of the election. Have you seen the contortions that these nominees have gone through when they're asked a basic question, who won the election in 2020? Joe Biden was sworn in as president. Well, who won the election? They won't answer it. They go through these painful contortions. They can't answer it because it's an article of faith. If you're loyal to Trump, you never accept the premise that he lost an election, and he did. He lost one in 2020. He pressured state election officials, and there were recordings of his pressure. This culminated in a January 6th attack on the Capitol, where President Trump's supporters tried to violently prevent the certification of the 2020 election. That same day, President Donald Trump was on the phone calling members of Congress to solicit their aid in blocking certification. Special counsel Jack Smith investigated this criminal effort by President Trump to overturn the election. So it's not surprising that Mr. Smith subpoenaed the call records of those the president tried to enlist in his conspiracy. To the extent the committee has questions about this, it should be former Special Counsel Smith testifying as a witness today before this committee, not 3 telecom companies who responded to legally issued subpoenas. This morning, the committee's Democratic members sent another letter to Chairman Grassley, renewing our request the committee accept Special Counsel Smith's offer to testify in public under oath. Unlike this committee, the House Judiciary Committee has already deposed Mr. Smith and called him to testify. Listen to what he said under oath about his investigation. He could be here saying the same thing today, but here's what he said in the House. Quote, our investigation developed proof beyond a reasonable doubt that President Trump engaged in a criminal scheme to overturn the results of the 2020 election and to prevent the lawful transfer of power, end of quote. What about those subpoenas for Republican senators' call records? Mr. Smith explained, quote, President Trump and his associates tried to call members of Congress in furtherance of their criminal scheme, urging them to further delay certification of the 2020 election. I did not choose those members, President Trump did. End of quote from Mr. Smith before the House. Whitewashing President Trump's attempts to overturn the 2020 election and the January 6th attack do not address a single problem facing America, and it helps set the stage for Trump's efforts to interfere in this year's election. This is frankly an embarrassing use of the committee's limited time, and I urge my colleagues to turn their attention to the threats that President Trump currently poses to our democracy. The Trump administration has been waging war against its own citizens in the streets of American cities. Federal immigration agents have become a paramilitary force. harassing, threatening, and on multiple occasions now killing Americans who oppose the president's mass deportation campaign. Last week, a top Trump ally, Steve Bannon, gave away the endgame, saying, quote, "We're going to have ICE surround the polls. We'll never again allow an election to be stolen," end of quote. Asked about these comments, the White House press secretary said she, quote, "can't guarantee," close quote, "ICE agents won't be near the polls. The goal is clear: intimidate Americans so they won't exercise their constitutional right to vote in November, because otherwise the Trump forces are going to lose that election. Indeed, history is repeating itself. We grow even closer to an election while President Trump is less popular than he has ever been. Instead of addressing the issues that American people really care about, the president is doubling down on his baseless claims of election fraud to justify interfering in another election. Last month, the FBI seized truckloads of 2020 election materials from Fulton County, Georgia, with Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, inexplicably in tow on the president's direct orders. Attorney General Bondi, in a letter to Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, demanded that the state of Minnesota turn over its voter rolls as a condition for the withdrawal of ICE and CBP from Minnesota. An attorney for the state described it as, quote, "a ransom note," close quote. And now President Trump is calling for Republicans to, quote, "take over the voting." His plan to repeat his election subversion tactics could not be plainer. I hope his disregard for Congress and the American people doesn't turn violent yet again. But instead of responding to this threat, Republicans here today show their undying fealty to the president's abnormal behavior and to his attempt to whitewash history and somehow make January 6th disappear. It won't work. We still have the videos.